Greetings book nerds, it's Ashley again, and in this video we are going to be starting out our opening round of our 2026 annual bookish bracket. Here are all of the contenders who could potentially win. Very exciting lineup. Once again, I'll put the bracket on the screen, but for this one I will be starting with actually the first bracket in the left corner, which is something I usually don't do, but it was just happenstance. And I will be reading the first book, You Don't Have a Shot by Raquel Marie. This one is a lesbian soccer romance, and I don't know much else about it. I've never heard of the author, so this one should be a really fun, fresh reading experience. With the Olympics on pretty much non-stop this week, I think this will be a really fun way to start off the bracket. So I'm going to get started on reading this one, and I'll update you probably tomorrow morning with what I'm thinking about it so far. It's the next day, and I've made decent progress with You Don't Have a Shot. I only made it to page 86, so I didn't get all that far, but I know enough about the book to give you a little bit about what it's about. You Don't Have a Shot follows Valentina Vale Castillo Green, and she's a young soccer player. The book starts at the very end of her junior year of high school. She's definitely a bit hot-headed, a bit rash, and she doesn't always think things through. On the cover, we have Letizia, who is a captain of her school's rival soccer team. These two get forced to work with each other when they enter a soccer summer camp, which is the main plotline of this story. They have to be co-captains of a soccer team in which they have to, try to coerce a bunch of not great soccer players into being a functional team. Thus far, I think it's been really fun. I really like all the strong Latina representation. There's a lot of girls from varying backgrounds who all have very strong independent personalities, and that's really great to see. There's also great representation of the LGBTQIA+ community. Our main character, Valentina, is lesbian herself. So her two best friends, one of them is bi, one of them is pan, and there's even been a mention of a trans girl who goes to their summer camp. So definitely in there for all of the queer content. So yeah, I'll have to let you know more about what I think as I read, but as of right now, I'm having great first impressions with it, and it's sitting at a mid 4-star right now. I'll update you probably when I finish it, so I'll see you then. I finished You Don't Have a Shot last night, so I figured it's time to give you guys a little update about it. I ended up really enjoying this one. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I'd say it's probably like a mid 4. But yeah, it was a really fun, summery, sapphic romance with a lot of really fun bantery vibes between the two main love interests. I did really like a lot of the themes, especially the ones that talked about gender stereotypes in our society. As well as all the ones that dealt with complicated relationships with our parents and all of the little traumas they leave behind for us. Vale has a lot of issues that she has to deal with, and she takes out a lot of her anger on her teammates. So most of the conflict in this book does center around Vale and her not being able to communicate with people very well and taking out her anger on them. But she does eventually realize that a lot of this stems from issues with her father and her deceased mother. So it's quite an interesting journey to watch her go on. 2 other things that I was wrong about in my other clip. I did say that Vale was a lesbian, where in reality she's pan, so she doesn't actually care what what her partner's gender is. And she's also asexual, which isn't exactly a spoiler, but isn't revealed for a while. There's a lot of hints towards it though, and I picked up on it pretty quickly. So that definitely gave her a couple different things to talk about. And I actually have heard of Raquel Marie. She wrote Ophelia After All, which I haven't read, but I have indeed heard of. So those are two things I just wanted to clear up a little bit. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I would recommend it to people who love sapphic sports romance, and it's like definitely a good summer read because it takes place at a summer camp, but I read it in the middle of winter and found it very enjoyable. This one is now going to face up against Date Me, Bryson Keller, which I actually started last night also. I'm only 60 pages into it, but it's been really fun and comical thus far. So pretty much in this one, there's this dare that Bryson Keller has received, and he pretty much doesn't believe in high school romances, and one of his friends dared him to date a different person every week for 3 months to prove that like he could if he wanted to, which is kind of a weird, goofy premise that doesn't make a lot of sense anyway, but it leads to a really fun little, I don't know, social experiment, I guess. So that's like the prologue, and then it jumps forward in time till Bryson Keller only has 2 weeks of his dare left. And pretty much Kai inadvertently ends up asking Bryson Keller if he'll date him, even though most people just assumed that only girls would be allowed to, but Kai is a secretly closeted gay man. Kai asks Bryson to date him, and Bryson doesn't see why not. I'm only on the first day, so Bryson Keller has to date each person from Monday through Friday, and I'm only on day 1, but it's been really cute and sweet so far. It's kind of like a fake dating romance, and there's obviously either going to be a queer awakening moment, or Bryson Keller is actually bisexual and Kai just didn't know it. So I'm excited to see where it progresses. I'm also really loving the theater elements. These two have a theater class together, and they have to do an assignment where they act out part of Romeo and Juliet on Friday, so they have like an excuse to hang out together anyway. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the vibes of this one so far. It's definitely goofy and kind of cheesy, but kind of in a good way. I mean, if you look at the back of this book, it's very like not serious and goofy, so definitely excited to read more of this one today, and I'll update you probably when I finish it, but maybe I'll throw in another update if I'm feeling ambitious. We'll see. Okay, I'm back again. It's been a little bit since I recorded because I did get a little behind on my recordings, but I have evidently finished Date Me, Bryson Keller. This one was, I told you guys a little about it, but it followed the fake dating dare that Bryson Keller had to take place in, and then Kai, who indulged in that dare with him. I thought this one was actually really cute. I thought it might be a little too cheesy for my liking, but it actually did talk about a lot of really great themes when it comes to like the queer community and coming out, and how closeted people like have to live their lives in fear and wear a mask all the time, and they just don't feel like they get to be their authentic selves. And it talks about how like different families react in different ways, and some friends are really supportive and some drift apart. And I just thought it was a really like authentic account of 2 different young gay men coming out to their friends and peers and stuff. So yeah, comparing this one to You Don't Have a Shot was actually kind of hard because I rated them both like mid-4s. They were both pretty solid books, and they're actually really similar in vibes. In this one we have a lesbian romance between 2 soccer jocks, and this one is between a soccer jock and a nerd, which I thought was a really funny coincidence that he also had just happened to be a soccer jock. He could have been a football jock or anything, but he also was a soccer player. And they had very similar themes. This one talked a little more about like gender stereotyping and like familial trauma, where this one talked more about queer relations and coming out and all that kind of stuff. This one had a very big sports lean. This one had a bit more of like a theater nerd lean, which I think was really fun. And I think what it really comes down to, this one was probably written stronger and had more like in-depth themes, but this one was like way more funny and I had more like of an enjoyable time reading it. So I picked Date Me Bryson Keller for the book to move on in this book bracket, which will then be paired up with another set of books in the future. So made it past opening round, which is really exciting. So our last time seeing You Don't Have a Shot, so bye-bye. Really solid book, and I so highly recommend it. But yeah, Don't Date Me Bryson Keller moves on. And then after that, I started The King is Dead by Benjamin Dean. And I have actually finished this one because, again, I'm behind on my recording. So I'll just tell you guys a little bit about everything right now. So The King is Dead follows James, who is the first Black king of England. And it deals with all of the press that he has to deal with and all of the racism and all that stuff. I honestly thought, based off of this cover, that it was going to be like a YA prom thriller featuring a love triangle, because there's two different hands reaching over. And I just wasn't that far off. This book was definitely a mystery read where they're trying to figure out who was leaking all of the royal secrets to the press and telling the paparazzi where the royal family would be at certain moments. So there was definitely a mystery aspect. It wasn't totally a thriller in my opinion. Some people say it is. I didn't really think the stakes were that high. That's probably about it. The messages I really liked in this one, it talked a lot about racism and fame, which I thought were both really done well. Obviously, racism is very evident in our world, and the first person to do anything of a certain race always seems to make a huge splash. So to be the first Black king of England is a really big deal. He also is gay, which they were trying to keep away from the public as much as possible. And that led to another interesting dynamic. Personally, I thought the romance was a little weird because he was kind of together with this one guy, but then the other guy was gone for most of the books and he kind of got together with this other guy, and I just thought it was kind of a messy situation. But overall, I gave this one a 3-star. It wasn't my favorite. It wasn't the most engaging, but I wasn't bored either. I personally figured out the mystery aspect, who was leaking information to the press, probably halfway through the book, so I've definitely figured it out much sooner than I should have, but there's still surprising elements which made it interesting to read. And then The King is Dead is paired up with The Gravity of Us, which I just recently started. This one follows a young boy who is a journalist and has a whole crap ton of followers on social media, and he tells them about all the things that's happening in New York. And he now has to move because his dad got hired by NASA. So I'm very intrigued to figure out what's going to happen in this one too. So I just finished The Gravity of Us, and I wish I liked this one more. I just feel nothing about it super engaged me, though there was it wasn't a bad book either. So anyways, let me tell you a little more about it. This book follows Cal, who is a young journalist who has a huge following on this social media platform in which he shares news stories that have gone viral, and he has so many followers. His father, Cal Sr., gets accepted into NASA's program to be one of the potential people to go to Mars in the near future. Therefore, they have to move from New York to Texas, which is obviously quite a different experience for young Cal. There, he moves into the astronauts' village and meets some of the other kids and has to essentially start a brand new life. This book focuses a lot on, once again, the media and how it can be used to both benefit and be a negative kind of vibe, you know? So, on one hand, it can really bring us all together. How, getting to the moon was such a big event. And obviously getting to Mars will also be another huge one if we eventually get there. So yeah, there's a lot of unity in this book and coming together in that aspect. But also, there's a reality TV show that also focuses on the astronaut families, which kind of tears people apart. It adds to all this drama. Cal ends up meeting this guy. I'm blanking on his name. Leon, and sparks kind of fly between them, and so there's a little romance aspect. Unfortunately, I thought their love story was kind of insta-lovey, and I didn't really feel the depth between them. Speaking of Leon, though, I really did appreciate how his depression was shown. I mean, I feel like, once again, there's a lot more to depression than what Leon has. Like, I'm not saying his depression isn't real, but it just wasn't as severe as other people's. But some of the, like, statements that he said about depression were very strong and empowering, and I felt them in my heart. Not a horrible book. If you're a fan of space and the whole space race craze, I'm sure this book would be much more enjoyable. But to me, the romance wasn't awesome. I'm not a huge fan of space things, and it once again was really focused on the drama and the media and all that stuff. So comparing that one to The King is Dead is actually, again, another very, very interesting pair up, because they're very similar books. You know, he's becoming the first king, Black King of England. Cal is a pretty famous newscaster who now is covering the NASA's story and going to Mars and his dad and all that stuff. And they're both kind of thrown into this spotlight that they didn't exactly want, and they deal with it in different ways. They both have kind of lackluster romances that I wasn't a huge fan of. This one had more like thriller-esque vibes, well, at least it was like a mystery, where this one was just like pure contemporary with like a hint of that like sci-fi-ness due to the space race that was going on. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of either of these books. I mean, neither were horrible, but I think I'm gonna say The King is Dead, because this one at least had like a lot like more intrigue, and the royal family to me is still more interesting than space. Well, at least like the astronaut side of going to space. Like, I don't know, it's just never been a huge thing for me. I really have to be in the mood for space to really enjoy it. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with The King is Dead by Benjamin Dean. So definitely not my favorite, but it's moving on to the next round. So congrats to The King is Dead. And with that, I think I'm gonna end this video here and do 4 books per round, and then do 4 videos, kind of have a 4-parter. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what I'll read next and see how good the books are. So thanks for watching, book nerds. Bye!